All right, what is up? Welcome in another episode of GC Live. I am Wes. He is Chris. And this is brought to you by our guy Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. ClintHammond.com is where you can get more information. Or if you just want to give him a call, talk about homes, talk about loans, talk about the Gamecocks, 803-422-6797. NMLS number 71597. We have to say that every time. Don't know why. Legally, we have to. But again, ClintHammond.com if you're in the market for a new home. It's as simple as that. Hit up our guy, Clint. I know all of you, most of you right now, probably not in the process or looking to purchase a home. All we ask is that if you do get to that point at some point in the future, or maybe you are thinking about it, give our guy, Clint, a chance to earn your business. Huge shout out to Clint, huge Gamecock supporter and huge supporter of GC Live. Chris, good week for the Gamecocks, you would say. Really a good few days in the transfer portal. I would say kind of a 2-for-2 week in terms of getting a couple of guys in where you started to see what we always talk about, that mutual interest kind of starts to crystallize. You get a guy from the portal on campus, and then at that point, you just got to make it happen and get them locked in with a commitment. They did that in the case of both Troy Pikes, the defensive tackle, and Nolan Haye, the offensive lineman. Let's go in order of commitment, starting with Troy Pikes, Georgia Southern defensive tackle, someone that South Carolina beats out, Georgia Tech, Georgia, Ohio State, all schools heavily involved there, visited several of those, and really just had what is turned into your typical portal recruitment where you see some visits all lined up in a row, and then you make a decision shortly after. Carolina on both these guys actually taking advantage of the last visit and then getting a commitment wrapped up shortly after. We've talked about it before. Portal recruiting, sometimes the last visit is actually not what you want. Sometimes you want to go ahead and set the standard early, I think. But in this case, again, we'll start with Pikes. In this case, it worked out, man. What do you think about the addition of Troy Pikes at a major position of need?
Well, yeah, I'd start there, Wes. I mean, the position of need, defensive tackle, that was the one that we all circled heading into the spring portal window. Heck, really, we circled it after last season, right? We probably talked about it during the season last year in 2024. Hey, Carolina's really good up front. They're deep. They're talented. That's awesome for this year. It turned out to be awesome. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, all right, next year, you're going to have to develop some guys that are on campus, bring in some freshmen, and you're going to have to hit the portal. So we knew this was coming. We knew it was going to be a position of need. And so we've seen South Carolina fill some needs at edge. We've seen some other portal needs, or I would say potential needs, kind of shift and evolve, from before the portal window to the end of it. But defensive tackle was a constant. And so Pikes ended up being a guy that made a lot of sense. An interesting prospect because when you talk to people about him, this is not yet a complete player. This is a guy that still, I think, has a lot of potential. He redshirted year one. He played last year at Georgia Southern. So you're getting somebody that has multiple years of eligibility. That's valuable because a lot of guys you bring in, maybe they're one and done type players because they're about to be out of eligibility or they're playing the last year and then going to the NFL. We saw that last year with Kennard, right? Demetrius Knight, for instance. Pikes gives you multiple years of eligibility. So got really good size. He can move, considerable upside. Would have loved to have him on campus for spring, but that's not the way that this recruitment worked out in terms of the timing. So you'll get him in for summer, preseason camp. And he's a guy that I think can give you, ideally, some snaps this year and help you out on that defensive line.
Yeah, that part's going to be fascinating, man, because I look at this thing from two sides. First of all, he was not yet a full-time starter at Georgia Southern and was someone that was being recruited by all these schools. And, I mean, you're talking about big-name schools, obviously. But it was more, I believe, about kind of, all right, this is the body type, this is the athleticism, this is kind of the traits, the profile that you're looking for at that defensive tackle spot. And so when those schools get involved, and I'll include South Carolina in that, man, like they've done very, very well on the defensive line, certainly for last year's group and the last few years before that, they're in the interior. And so you're going, who can come in and replace a ton of just production that you've lost there? And so you're going, all right, 3 years to play. This upside is part of the conversation, right? Like if a guy is a one and done, it's more about, all right, what can they do this year? The potential long-term upside isn't even part of the conversation. Well, then the more you hear, though, you hear about like South Carolina's plan for him, both talking directly to Troy and to some other folks around the program. It's all right. They see him and are hoping and wanting him to be a guy who can come in and make an impact. Kind of has been compared a little bit athletically to like a TJ Sanders, to a Taka Hemingway, someone they want to play in kind of that role where they're going to turn him loose. Has played in a similar scheme to what South Carolina does, in Clayton White's scheme. They think that part will not be a very difficult transition. Now, you are projecting there a little bit when you're saying, all right, what can a guy do for us this year? You also have to kind of always remind yourself these things are not static. Like not going through spring ball, not getting acclimated, not sort of getting used to everything at South Carolina. That does hurt you a little bit, but can he step in and provide you some rotational role early in the season, maybe, and then maybe that role grows as the season progresses. Now, I don't think South Carolina is putting that limiter on him. Like I think you're gonna, if you're Troy Pikes, you're getting every opportunity to come in. I mean, if you're good enough, you can steal a starting spot. I just think if you dial it back a little bit, zoom out a little bit, big picture, we know that's not the easiest position to just come in and play right away and be a dude. So I think this is going to be a fascinating one to see what do we hear early on, but then what does that growth look like as we get closer to the season, but then even as the season progresses.
Yeah, you can, especially for younger players, you can improve throughout the course of a season, right? Or we see guys, hey, it does go the other way. You see guys who start out a season with a substantial role, even a starting role. By the end of the year, that's been dialed back or eliminated, right? So I think we lose that. How do things look game one? Will they look a certain way? What do they look like by the end? I mean, heck, Lenore Sellers is actually a great example of that, right? Look at his growth from ODU to the Clemson game. Clemson game looked pretty good to me. ODU not so great, but he was a player coming in and playing a very difficult position, the hardest position on the field. You think about Troy Pike's moving up a level, right, from where he's playing now to moving up to the SEC, getting acclimated, learning a defense, right, just getting used to a new place. You've got all those things, and you're doing it in a shorter window than a guy that got here in December, went through winter workouts, went through spring ball and all those things. So at the same time, Wes, I like how you put it. The staff isn't going to put any type of limitation. We know how Shane Beamer likes his program run. There's not going to be any starting positions promised to anyone. And he's going to come in and get every opportunity. And although the staff feels better about defensive tackle exiting the spring than they did coming in, you get the sense very much that there's still very open competition there. Like you kind of got, maybe if you have a pecking order in your mind about what it may look like, that's fine. But there's still plenty of time to adjust that. Because look, here's the other thing. Remember, we were talking about another transfer from junior college, Zay Hardy, going into the spring. Hey, this could change this room if Zay Hardy immediately puts his stamp on the room. I think safe to say that hasn't happened yet, but you can't rule out the possibility of the light coming on at some point. So will it come on early for Troy Pikes? Will it take some time? Is he a little bit more of a 2026 player than 2025, or does he come in and put his stamp on the room? I agree with you. Fascinating storyline, but nonetheless, I think a needed pickup because you hit a target of what you were looking for if you're the staff in this class and landing a transfer defensive tackle in the spring window.
Well, and, immediately, man, like you said, that was the spot you said, if nothing else happened, if South Carolina added one player in this portal window, I think, yeah, it's nice to get a couple of edge guys. It's nice to add an offensive lineman. But if you were just like, all right, you can only have one guy, it would have had to have been, I think, a defensive tackle. Like that to me was priority number one. Now, of course, and you and I have talked about this, your needs shift not only from year to year, but from day to day in this college football world. And so while South Carolina had a great deal of success keeping guys on campus after or during this spring transfer portal window, you are still always going to have losses. And so losing a Cam Pringle, losing a Ja'Kai Moore, who actually committed to UNC, and Bill Belichick. By the way, I don't know if y'all are on. Do you ever get on Reddit, Chris?
I do.
I
don't look at Reddit as much I don't really do a lot of sports topics, but random rabbit hole topics, you tend to end up on Reddit.
Well, if you have like a problem and you need to figure out how to solve it, like somebody on Reddit has had this problem, right?
Yes, that's right.
But sometimes on Reddit, you will see, going down a rabbit hole here, but you will see people do this little thing called Remind Me, and there'll be like a topic and they'll just respond. And there's a little Remind Me code, and you can be like, remind me 2 years, remind me 3 years. So let's go ahead and just put in for all of us a collective remind me. Let's give it a little bit of time so he can speak freely. Remind me to invite Ja'Kai Moore in about 3 years onto one of our platforms.
Okay.
To give us the entire background of playing for Bill Belichick with what is we've all seen it in the news with the girlfriend and can you imagine? Our guy Ja'Kai, we were there when he committed to South Carolina 7 years ago. And I'm just telling you, there's going to be some stories there, I would imagine. So
yeah, he'll have some stories. And Ja'Kai, I mean, look, man, he's a really good kid. So I'm definitely wishing him all the best in Chapel Hill.
Dude, if he can stay healthy, he's going to go in there and start, I think.
Yeah, he's got a good chance.
And I'm saying that I don't know anything about their depth chart on the O-line. I'm saying that blindly. Ja'Kai's got some good karma built up, I think, to where hopefully the college football world rewards him and he gets to go in there and play his final year of eligibility, because I was really pulling for him to be able to get on the field some for South Carolina this year. But, again, you kind of understand why he left. So, to bring it back around, Ja'Kai leaves, Cam Pringle leaves. Cam probably wasn't going to be in the two deep, but when you lose those guys early in their career, Cam obviously early in his career, it eats away at kind of that final depth, like that. Your guys, once you kind of get past that two deep, I think. I mean, spring game, you had walk-ons starting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a perfect example of how things are constantly shifting. So if you just said, hey, what's a portal need? I don't know if I would have necessarily put O-line near the top of my list a while back after they added the guys during the initial portal window. But it has kind of shifted a little bit. Hey, let's go get one or two. Nolan Haye very quickly became one of the names you were hearing. This one was about as straightforward as it could possibly be. He named about 4 schools he was interested in. He cut it to 2 right off the bat, South Carolina, Oklahoma State. Took visits to both, went home, took an exam, thought about it, committed to the Gamecocks. No drama, no nothing, just straightforward as can be. And obviously, Chris, there was very strong mutual interest between the two parties pretty early on, and it seems like that got confirmed with the official visit to Columbia.
I think it was the same, and I don't remember the exact day, but I think it was on the same day or same night, Wes, where a couple of different names surfaced as being linked to South Carolina as offensive linemen from the portal. And you and I did some checking on it and kind of very quickly came back that Nolan Haye is the one to really watch, right? The visit was scheduled. It was confirmed. It was booked. And you just got the sense that this was going to be a good fit. Now, he had other options, so you got to go land him. But you felt like, hey, this could end up being the one. And when you look at, I go to the Ja'Kai Moore, I go to 2 different things. The Ja'Kai Moore loss, Ja'Kai, very versatile guy. He's played in over 40 games. He's played 6 years of college ball, so he's experienced. Started over 20 games, and he played every position but center. Then you look at the fact that South Carolina looks like Boaz Stanley has a good hold probably. Beamer said it publicly. Exiting spring, he's looking pretty good to grab that spot. But you look around, say, man, what if you could find another guy that could play multiple spots and even center if you needed it, just to add that competition? Well, Nolan Haye, here you got a guy that has played a bunch of snaps in college. He's a multi-year college guy. So he's experienced. He's played well. And he's also he hadn't played 4 like Jakai, but he's played 3 different spots. He's played guard. He's played right tackle. He's played center. So he has experience to where you can plug him in at probably 3. He's probably not going to be a left tackle, I would imagine, but you probably feel decent about putting him at some of those other spots. And I think one thing that gets lost, to bring up maybe a third layer, just the overall numbers, right? Not that South Carolina's going, let's go out and add a body. You want to add competitive depth. But when you lose 2 guys to the portal, even though they were in different phases, I would say, of their development, Jakai in 7th year, Cam going into the 2nd, and projected to have different roles, you start thinking about practice, competitive depth in practice, scrimmage situations, reps. You want to have another guy in there where you can get a really good look. And when you're short on numbers, which they were until they got Hay in the fold, then that can affect those types of things. So makes a lot of sense to grab him. And he just kind of fits that mold. Carolina loves grabbing these experienced guys out of the portal, at the offensive line position. You don't really see them going, here's a redshirt freshman in the portal who is this highly rated former guy. Let's go grab him. And I really think, Wes, with O-line being such a developmental position, it's almost more of a risk to go out and get some former highly rated guy who just hadn't worked out yet early at a position, because you kind of don't know as much what you're getting. With some of these older guys, you can kind of see their trajectory. And you can also see, hey, once we get a hold of that guy, a lot of them have played at a lower level, we can further develop him in the SEC in our program and kind of unlock what he has left potential-wise.
Yeah, and I think Carolina has recruited very well in the high school ranks on paper. So you're kind of going with the younger guys. All right, we're going to bet on our people. We're going to bet on our younger players that are sticking around and developing, our, Josiah's, our, at this point, Tro and Tree and those guys, while supplementing it with these portal additions. And I think in a perfect world, Carolina would probably love to go into a year without having to supplement via the portal on the O-line at all. But for one, you're just not there. And for two, you may never get there if you're kind of young depth guys that are already kind of seeing the writing on the wall a little bit, like a Cam Pringle. If those type guys are going to leave, you're maybe almost always just going to be in a cycle of saying high school guys and a couple of, 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 years left. Because some of these guys, I think Sharp, there was actually some discussion. Does Sharp have 2 years? I think he maybe does. But point being, that's going to kind of be the approach, I think, is these kind of 1 or 2 years left guys to supplement what are your high school development guys. And I don't want to say developmental like they're developmental prospects, because almost all these guys are highly recruited players, but almost any O-line prospect in some way is kind of a developmental prospect because it's a developmental position. So even a 5-star Josiah Thompson is coming in and you're saying, all right, we're going to have to continue to develop this guy physically in the weight room. And then, of course, in terms of some technique things. So, by the way, the little bit I was able to watch of Josiah in the spring, I think that's something that's not talked about enough, how big playing last year is going to be for him this year. I think he quietly had a really, really good spring. So something to keep an eye on there, the advantages of just playing that true freshman in year one and letting him have the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between, and then have an entire offseason to kind of bounce off of that. I think it's going to be really valuable for South Carolina. But you add in Nolan Haye. I'll be curious to see kind of early on what position do they put him at? How quickly is he able to kind of push? I think we've said this about almost all the O-line portal additions that have taken place really this past kind of spring window and the year before, Chris. A lot of it's just going to depend on how they play, right? Like,
Yeah.
if he comes in and is really good and pushes really hard, then maybe he steals a starting spot. Like, you cannot rule that out. Or he comes in and provides valuable depth, and he's there whenever he's needed. But I know this, Nolan Haye, pretty confident kid. I don't think he's at South Carolina. I don't think he's committing to South Carolina and signing with the Gamecocks if he didn't have confidence in himself that he could come in and win a job.
Yeah, I mean, you look at one of the schools, actually the other school who's already landed a Gamecock out of the portal was Oklahoma State, that was heavily involved, right? And getting a sense, not that I'm an Oklahoma State insider, Wes, but just kind of following what they've been doing. They've been trying to get some things done this offseason in the portal, and it does look like one position they were really after was offensive line. And I know you told me they had lost some guys. They weren't very good last year on the offensive line. So it could be that,
No, they were good last year.
They were good.
Tyler corrected himself.
Correct. Okay. They were good last year, but
they were
lost
good, but I think they were replacing those guys that were good.
Replacing the good guys there.
Yeah.
So the prospects for a guy stepping in who's experienced like Nolan Haye were probably good there. Not to say they aren't good here, but if Nolan Haye's a guy looking around going, where can I go and play? I mean, honestly, that makes you feel better that he's not taking that approach if you're South Carolina, because they want guys who want to come in, earn a spot, and it seems like he has that mentality. So we'll see how it shakes out, right? But I do think if you're following this thing, don't just gloss over it as, because I know I've spent a lot of time talking about adding him, and I'm looping in depth to it. Yes, it is depth, but don't just chalk it up as, okay, they're adding him as a practice player, right? Like, this is a guy that I think has a chance, and they're going to compete and sort it out in the summer and preseason camp.
And that's the beauty of not promising guys starting spots on either side of it. If you're a Spencer Rattler who has his great resume, you're not being promised to start. If you're a guy kind of making that move up, the guy who maybe is ahead of you when you arrive on campus has not been promised a starting job either. You're going to have every chance to come in and compete. All right, before we move it forward here, Chris, you want to talk about one of our great sponsors?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Our friends over at PalmettoGolfing.com, Palmetto Golf and Belts, our friend Brandon Cohn, great Gamecock fan, longtime Gamecock Central subscriber. You can go to PalmettoGolfing.com. That's Palmetto Golf and Belts, PalmettoGolfing.com. Great website. And it's going to show you all the different options that he has for golf apparel. If you are a big golfer, obviously we're right in the swing of the season, pun intended. I just made that up on the spot. You can check out his custom golf gloves, custom golf tees. He's got needlepoint belts, which if you're not a golfer like me, those are outstanding additions, but of course you can wear them on the course. He's got South Carolina colors. He's got the cross design and all of those. He also has well-made custom golf towels. You can check those out, PalmettoGolfing.com. Great stuff. The cool thing I like about the needlepoint belts, Wes, they're extremely well made, but they are not nearly as expensive as what you may find in other retail stores or online stores. So go check them out at PalmettoGolfing.com. If you're a golfer, you're going to find something that you love there. The reviews have been coming in on the Insiders Forum on Gamecock Central. Our members have been loving the stuff from PalmettoGolfing.com. So go check it out.
Yeah, appreciate his support as always. And like Chris said, go check it out. All right, man. 2 guys in the last week. They joined the 2 edge rushers who were already in the class, George Wilson, Damon Clowney. What do you think is next? I think this is an interesting time because if you looked at it specifically like players, targets, guys we knew Carolina was after, those were kind of, for now, the 2 guys we were tracking this week. Now, I know we've asked around. I know we've been told, hey, this doesn't ever truly end. Carolina will – my impression from what we've been told, maybe there are other specific guys. I don't know. But that Carolina will certainly continue to mine the transfer portal for, hey, is there somebody out here that makes sense? What does that look like? I don't think we know yet. Could that be yet another defensive tackle? Could that be add on another offensive lineman? Could that be kind of the best available route? Like, does somebody just sort of pop up? We've seen Carolina add, you mentioned, dude, remember when Nate Atkins basically got the last scholarship of that cycle leading into that year? It was like the last of the 85.
Yep.
And, dude, the hand wringing on that, you're taking the coach's son and all this stuff. And then Nate goes out there and, I don't know, maybe you don't win the Clemson game without Nate Atkins being out there. So that and I don't really recall thinking tight end was a massive need for South Carolina at that position. Or at that point in time, I should say. I say all that to say they're not done till they're done, so you cannot rule out somebody randomly popping up.
Well, I remember specifically, Wes, us talking about, hey, Nate Atkins, okay, let's see how this goes. We were not among the hand wringers, by the way. But you think back to the room, right? 2022, you had Jaheim Bell. You had Austin Stogner. You had Trey Kenyon. I may be leaving somebody out even, but I specifically remember those three guys at least. And so you're adding in Nate, and what we were told is like, this guy's just too good of a football player, and he's versatile. He can do some different things. And, I mean, he ends up making an iconic catch against Clemson and ends up making a game-changing, game-sealing, I would say, or potentially, they see that helped seal the game, his special teams play, stripping the ball on the punt return from Antonio Williams. So he ended up being a huge factor in that game. So 2 points there, like 2 takeaways, man. Look, if your entire high school and portal class was guys that were like where Nate came from, East Tennessee State, no disrespect. But if your whole high school class was guys that had East Tennessee State offers and that's about it, and your whole transfer class was from East Tennessee State, that's about the result you would get. But there is a wealth of history, not just here, but other places and data showing you can take guys from East Tennessee State or William and Mary or Wingate or wherever they come from, North Carolina Central, that can end up being good players and NFL players for you if you hit the evaluation. So that's point one. Secondly, there could be somebody that, to us kind of comes out of nowhere. It seems like they've hit the needs that were the immediate, like really, really need to check this box. But does somebody come up that makes sense at a certain position? That's something we'll monitor, because you're right. We did kind of get that caveat of it never truly, truly ends in terms of just continuing to monitor the portal.
Is there a position you would take if it was you?
Well, and I'm trying to base my answer off I do not profess to know exactly who is left. I was going to say what, but who is left in the portal. Like if there was some just alpha wide receiver that is like from the Southeast and really wants to be a Gamecock, would you say, nah, we're totally set? I mean, probably not, right? At the same time, are you like, we got to sign a wide receiver? Probably not. Certainly if there's another defensive tackle, that I'd go for that. If there was a big time safety, I would go for that. If, Wes, there was a specialist, kicker or punter out there that made sense. Carolina feels a lot better about that, about the specialist situation than they did going into spring, primarily because of Mason Love's emergence. But you're still sitting here going, okay, Mason Love's going to do something, but what? Which one? Mm-hmm. So those are the ones that would kind of be on my radar.
Yeah. It surprised me a little bit that Beamer said they're not planning to take a specialist. And he said, hey, it's not 1,000,000,000%. So less than 1 billion%.
Less than
But
there's a chance.
so you're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah.
Just to help split the duties with Mason Love. But hey, man, that's a decision every coach is going to have to make in today's college football world for every position, right? Do I just put all my trust in my guys that are already here, or do we need to add more? And and as Beamer even has told the guys, hey, if we're adding more, that doesn't mean we don't believe in you. It doesn't mean we're not counting on you.
Right.
But for one, your job is to build depth, and really, ultimately, your job really is to win football games. And so, in order to win football games, you have to have depth. You have to have competition. You have to have as few question marks as possible. And it's kind of a little bit interesting, man, because while teams also have the ability to add essentially from free agency, more so than they've ever had, to fill roster holes, the other end of that, you also get maybe more questions than you ever have because you're losing dudes at the same rate, potentially, that in the past maybe stuck around and was that big depth piece, or even in some cases were, starters for you. So everybody has questions, I think. Like, I don't know if there's a roster out there going into 2025 that's just entirely complete with zero questions. I mean, maybe you know of one, but I doubt it.
Yeah, no. Every team, I think, has questions at some level. Some way less than others, right? Like, I think if we went and studied Ohio State's roster, at least on paper, it probably looks great. But they're sitting there.
They got to figure out quarterback.
They got to figure out quarterback. That's a huge one. The rest of the roster, they certainly lost. How many draft picks did they have, right? The thing that they can do is they can say, here's this, Julian saying, right? Oh, well, he'll be the guy at court. He'll just step right in. Not that simple. And then you lost a ton of NFL guys. Yes, they've recruited enormously well, but you have to at some point transfer from on paper to not. So those are their questions, right? Yeah, you've recruited well, but you're replacing quarterback, like you said, good call, and a bunch of other talent you just lost to the league. Even schools that have done very well with retention, South Carolina is one of those. Well, we've been talking all offseason about some of the questions that they have. That the fact that they retained so well last year meant that they now have some holes to fill this year. So everybody is juggling roster management for sure now.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of who. Georgia has questions. I mean, even if you went through the teams that are in the CFP last year, all of them have some level of question.
Yeah, like Clemson. I know people won't want to hear this. They did a really good job retaining, right? Like they've got their quarterback back. They've got TJ Parker at edge and Peter Woods, and they've got their receiving core coming. But they're losing Phil Maffa and Barrett Carter, and they're losing some guys too. So you always have some level of questions, even if you look really good on paper and you're bringing a bunch of guys back.
Yeah, for sure, man. Texas is going to get a lot of hype, I feel like.
Yeah.
Going into next year. They're going to be a favorite for a lot of people. But yeah, Ohio State, man, the thing about them too, they were the most dominant team by the end. As good as they were, they still lost 2 games last year. So
they did. Yep.
Take away one aspect of that roster or one growing pain and add that in. Do they have 3 losses and then they don't even get into the playoff this year? You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot, I think, still to be determined. But it also hit me earlier. This is from something we were talking about a second ago. When we realized, all right, Nolan Haye is the guy to watch for South Carolina, it struck me, if you're trying to follow this portal recruiting stuff, so different than high school ball. But if a guy says, I have set an official visit for, in this case, Well, he ended up moving it up, but regardless, I'm going to take a visit to South Carolina May 2nd. Ends up getting moved up April 29th. That is actually completely different from, I'm going to take a visit to South Carolina. Because remember, there was 2 offensive linemen. One of them was, I'm visiting South Carolina May 1st, May 2nd, whatever it was.
Yeah.
The other one's, I'm going to visit South Carolina.
And one of them, Wes, was like not direct, like it was sourced, like not directly from the prospect.
Yeah.
Another difference. A little different.
But if you say you've got one scheduled in portal world, that's just a lot different than you're planning to.
100%.
Because if you see I'm planning on it, you don't even know if that school wants to bring that guy in.
Yep.
At that point.
Yep.
So just something to, keep an eye on, I guess. You got anything before we hit the weekend, man?
I think I'm out, man. I think we're good. Good note to end on for the weekend.
Tell you what, let's give them one more positive note, and that's our friend Andy Luedecke at My Perfect Franchise, myperfectfranchise.net, 404-973-9901, or email Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Contact Andy today. If franchising a business is something that sounds awesome to you, whether that's maybe you just want a side hustle, or maybe you want to get completely out of the employee side and into business ownership, Andy's going to be there for you every single step of the way. And the beautiful thing about it is there is no fee to you whatsoever for Andy's services. So what he's going to do, he's going to talk to you on the phone or talk to you on Zoom, get to know you a little bit, see what your financial situation is, see how much time to commit you have, and see what your goals are for being a franchisee. And then he is going to match you up with franchises that make sense for all those things for you. So if that sounds even just intriguing to you, to think about Andy, he loves this stuff, absolutely loves to talk about it. So even if it's just an inkling of, hey, maybe that's something I want to get into, call Andy today. He will walk you through what that might look like for you. 404-973-9901. Big weekend, Chris, for the softball team. Tough matchup yesterday. I got a feeling they're going to bounce back, though, at home. 2 big games, one coming up tonight at 6 o'clock, and then Saturday regular season finale I believe that's at noon over there on campus for the Gamecocks. And certainly want to wish that group luck. They've been very good to us on the radio in terms of hopping on and keeping us updated on that program. So want to wish them luck. And actually, Jeff, that's a great idea, man. Do y'all want to address the on-3 rivals thing? Yeah, that's so for one, just a full circle moment. Certainly, for Shannon Terry. For those who don't know the history, we won't go all through it, but Rivals was kind of his baby early on. He had Alliance Sports. He purchased Rivals and then ultimately sold Rivals to Yahoo Sports before he then started 24/7 Sports, sold that to CBS Sports to CBS, and then started On3, now has bought back Rivals. If you are, I think the most simple way to say it, Chris, if you're a Gamecock Central subscriber, nothing changes for you, in terms of your subscription, in terms of our content. I hate saying our content won't change because I'm always hopeful we're going to keep evolving our content. So, but also if you leave any wiggle room there, people think you're trying to out semantic them or be cute with, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to, so nothing will change except for the fact that our content will always be evolving like it always has on Gamecock Central. But if you're subscribed to us, if you're subscribed to Gamecock Central, you're still going to have me there, Chris there, Jack there, Kev there, the whole crew, providing you content. The hope is that this will just be even more resources and then even more content on a national level that you will be able to consume.
Yeah, just hopefully we can even, not to say anything about On 3 at Rivals, just Gamecock Central. Hopefully we can continue to, improve what we do for y'all every day. But this is just nothing but a value add, right? Like you don't have to, oh, are y'all going away? What's happening? Does my subscription change? None of that. It's all positives, all good things, and exciting, right? I mean, there's some West Gamecock Central spent years on the Rivals Network. I mean, you were on the Rivals Network as part of Gamecock Central for years. I was there from 2009 to 2022, of course, with Gamecock Central. So you meet a lot of great people. So even better things coming. So excited about that.
Yeah, and I think one part I wanted to make clear to everybody, I posted this on the board too. The thing about the branding, all right, Rivals brand is going to be basically recruiting and high school sports. On 3 brand, it's going to be like college, NIL, stuff like that. That does not mean that the fan sites are going to only fall under those windows, right? Like under those titles. So basically, the fan sites kind of live as they always have, a little bit in between all that, still doing our things with all local coverage. So I think one of the things I saw a few people ask, like, all right, wait, am I going to need another subscription to get my recruiting coverage? No, Gamecock Central will still be covering the teams, all the multiple teams we're already covering for South Carolina, and recruiting as well. We'll be providing that content just like we always have. So that part does not change. Now, a national standpoint, yes, it sounds like as of right now, the plan is for the recruiting national updates to be branded Rivals, and then the other kind of team type national stuff to be branded as On 3. But, this stuff is still very new. I know it was being worked on behind the scenes for quite some time. That's anytime there's an acquisition like this, it's going to be worked on for quite a long time behind the scenes. But the little specifics about the national stuff, I'm sure a lot of that is still being worked through. All that really matters for us at Gamecock Central is we're going to have all the great content and then even more resources for you, the reader, the viewer, the listener. And we're excited, man. Lots of great people over there on the Rivals Network. And like I've said, if you want to hate read Clemson stuff, very soon you'll be reading TI and the recruiting updates from those guys as well, man.
Yep, that'll be awesome. And those guys do a fantastic job covering Clemson. Some of our people actually like reading it. Some people, like you said, hate read it. Whatever you like, whatever your jam is, you can go do it. So that'll just be another benefit. It'll be awesome. Ready to get that thing rolling. We don't have tons of specifics, but there's a plan. I'm sure we don't really know the plan in some ways. Some of it we do, some of it we don't. We'll share along the way. How about that? If we find out, hey, this particular thing's coming down the pike, here's an update, we'll share it on Gamecock Central. We'll share it here. Yep,
no doubt. All right, he's Chris. I'm Wes. This has been fun. Appreciate y'all as always. Appreciate our sponsors as always too. Y'all have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.